All right. Thank you everyone for joining. We're going to get started. Welcome to this evening. I'm Robin Lucas. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the Grassroots Advocacy Manager at AAUW and the AAUW Action Fund.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rhiannon Collins. My pronouns are also she, her, hers, and I am the Communications Associate for AAUW and the AAUW Action Fund.
All right, so again, welcome. At AAUW, we are focused on real-time solutions. In this important election year, AAUW and the AAUW Action Fund encourage individuals to get involved in the political process by educating both themselves and others about the issues at stake and where the candidates stand on them. But how do you do that in a public health crisis is a very popular question where in-person interaction is prohibited. You guessed it, online. Tonight, we're going to talk about how you can expand your engagement and impact online. I want to remind folks that everyone participating comes to the virtual table from different places on the spectrum of experience here. So please be patient with the moments where you might already know something or still do not know what's being discussed. Also, so much of social media is self-taught that even Rhiannon and I learned much of what we both know from Google, YouTube, and just on the advocacy job learning.
Absolutely.
That said, I have a few housekeeping notes first. As we go, you can direct any questions about the program to the Q&A box below. If you have any technical questions that we can help with, please direct them to our panelists in the chat box. We'll save most questions until the end, but I do encourage you to write them in as you think of them, and we will try to grab some topical ones as we go. So the agenda for this evening. Together, we're going to walk you through best practices and tactics to adopt for advocacy via social media and how you can leverage that knowledge to expand your impact. We'll discuss key platforms, supporting programs for content creation, and a few templates for engagement online. Then we'll conclude with some new and forthcoming resources and take some questions. We want to operate tonight with two key thoughts in mind. One, social media is an ever-changing landscape, and nothing is a hard rule for everyone in every situation. You're going to learn a lot more as you go, so keep trying and find out what works for you and your advocacy issues. And number two, no question is wrong here. If there's something that you don't know, please send it in to us. So let's jump in. Social media. Prior to the pandemic, it was already everywhere, but now these platforms are becoming critical tools for engagement to even more people. Again, I know some folks have always been on social media and are now looking for ways to flex their advocacy abilities online. And some participants are here to learn the true A to Z on how to interact and advocate. First, let's go over a few things so we can all use the same terminology. Rhiannon?
All right, so just getting started with some social media terms and things we're talking about this evening. Again, as Robin said earlier, if you already know this, feel free to totally space out, go get yourself something to eat or something. We'll try and make this quick. So first of all, hashtags. These are words and phrases that are preceded by the ever-present pound symbol, often used to tie together campaigns or trending conversations. So what is trending? What is a trend? So this is usually when there is a spike in traffic around a single hashtag or a group of hashtags, often indicating a sudden national conversation. So algorithm. The algorithm is the bane of all social media managers' existence. It is the secret and constantly changing formula that each social platform uses to determine what content each viewer sees. Reach and impressions. These are kind of nitty gritty, but basically they are metrics for how many times your post was viewed. Engagement. This is when your audience engages with your post. So that can mean liking, retweeting, replying, commenting, or sharing. Conversion. This is the number one goal of social media advocacy. So conversion is when someone takes an action from your post. So clicking on the link and completing the task, whether that's signing a petition or sending a letter to their representative or signing up for an email list, any of those things would be a conversion. Influencer. So this is a term that's thrown around a lot these days, but as it's going to be relevant here in what we're talking about, a social media influencer is anyone who already has access to an audience of followers that you want access to yourself. So this doesn't have to be a household name like Beyonce or Michelle Obama, but it can be an influencer for a local event, can be a reporter, local business, organization, or a government official, whether that's local school board or really anyone. So basically ask yourself, who already has access to the audience that I want to know about my content? Live stream. Robin's going to discuss this more later in part 3, but a live stream is basically just a live video feed broadcast usually over social media or promoted over social media. So these last two aren't actually social media terms, but they're going to be relevant to what we talk about today. And so one of them is CTA, which stands for your call to action. This is usually the thing that we were looking for in the conversion. And then ROI, your return on investment. So how much effort and resources am I putting into this, and what is the likely payoff? So to connect all these terms together, the hashtags you use and the current trends are fed into the algorithm to determine who sees your post. And if your post reaches the right audience, and maybe even an influencer, they engage with it and hopefully convert by completing your CTA. All right, so those were our terms. Super briefly, some social media tools are going to kind of fall under a couple categories. You've got scheduling tools. We use some paid ones, but these are all free and pretty simple to use for pre-scheduling your posts ahead of time. Design tools. Canva is a super accessible and user-friendly interface for designing shareables and graphics to use on your posts. And Unsplash, Pixabay are some great free source stock photo places to check out. Link tools are going to be for tracking and shortening things. And monitoring tools are going to be a bit more advanced depending on where you're coming from, but can be great for picking out what hashtags you want to use or keeping an eye on what's trending and current conversations around your key issues. Okay, so now we've got that out of the way, moving on to some best practices. So getting to know our platforms. Although there are so many social media platforms out there right now, in addition to Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, but these are really where you're likely to see the most success with promoting advocacy. And so that's where we're going to focus on our discussion today. With that in mind, not all platforms are created equal. They do not attract the same users, and users also go to different platforms for different reasons. So this is why it's important to understand how they are different and which is going to be best for your needs.
I just want to add in here, honestly, with so many platforms being used daily by a lot of us, some folks compartmentalize which ones are for personal, professional, or political use. So it's really important to get to know your intended audience's preferences.
Absolutely. So just to get a quick overview of these three main platforms, each platform has its own strengths and weaknesses based on who's on it and how it's used. So Facebook can be really great for community building, for having more in-depth conversations with people, and event promotion, including these virtual events we're going to talk about in a minute. But these tend to have a more limited demographic. You generally have an older demographic on Facebook than our other platforms. And due to recent changes in the algorithm, it can be difficult to reach new audiences, but it's a great way to reach out to your existing audiences in a meaningful way. Twitter is excellent for coalition building, creating and building on influencer relationships, and timeliness with those trending hashtags and stuff. But on the flip side of that, one of the weaknesses is that Twitter can be very fleeting. Throw a tweet out there and it's kind of gone within the hour, whereas Facebook and Instagram are going to have more staying power. And it can also be kind of difficult to foster a meaningful dialogue on Twitter because it doesn't really have much of that back and forth built into how it's designed. It's possible, but it's harder. And so for Instagram, obviously this is a very visual platform. You have to have a graphic to post on it. And so that can also be very emotional. Like graphics have a lot of impact. It's great for live event coverage using the stories function, and it's really good for brand visibility. The reason I say it's good for brand visibility is because that's important, but it's not great for achieving those conversions because there's just the way, again, that the platform is designed, there's not a lot of ability to link out. And some of this maybe not a weakness of the platform, but is definitely a struggle for content creators, is you need to have interesting visual content all the time. And like that was hard before, and now we're all stuck at home. It's so much harder. So there's a brief overview of 3 different platforms. All right, so a couple of best practices that are really going to serve you across all of those, despite their differences. Here we go. So keeping your content short and concise. We know Twitter has a character count, but just because you can write as much as you want on Facebook doesn't mean that that's the place for your thesis, okay? You really want to keep that just as short as a tweet, if not shorter. We actually have metrics that generally a Facebook post that's shorter than a line is going to perform the best. This seems really silly and basic, but proofreading is really important. It's really important in establishing trust and credibility during a time when social media is becoming a less trusted or reliable source of information. And I know it's super easy. You're out there in the field and you've got your phone and you're just typing away, but really do take a minute to go back and reread what you wrote. Another thing is make your CTA or your call to action as simple and easy as possible because people are kind of lazy and you want to make it not, go to my website and click on this button and do these 4 things and XYZ. You really want it to be just click on this link and do this one thing. That's it. Again, don't make up your own hashtags. There are plenty of tools out there to go ahead and research which hashtags are performing. So even if you have, if you've got hashtag pay gap, hashtag equal pay, you can always check which one of those is getting more traffic and you want to use that one. Posts with visuals tend to perform 2 to 3 times better than posts that don't. So make sure you have clean and simple, uncluttered visual graphics. Again, Canva is going to be a great tool for that. Connecting with other accounts by tagging them or adding them is super great. It's going to give you the added benefit of not only are your followers going to see that post, but their followers could see that post. So that's potentially doubling, tripling your audience. Consistent branding. So if you have a Facebook account, a Twitter account, and an Instagram account, it should be clear that those are all coming from the same place. I do want to have a quick note about integrated communications if you're at that level. So if you do have an email list or you're doing paper mailers, or in the future when we have live events again, you have handouts and materials, you want that to be connected to your social media. You don't want to rely on your social media entirely on its own. So if you have a messaging going out on social media, you kind of want it to be reflected in your other materials if you have them. And again, this is going to be sort of across the board important in most of what we do, not just social media, but provide value. You need to be providing value to your audience in a landscape that's so cluttered with just so many people's voices. You want to, why are they coming to you? What are you providing of value to your audience? Okay.
All right, so given all of that background, best practices, tools, and terms, I have here 4 tips for advocacy posts. First, Be prepared with links. If you're doing, say, a Get Out the Vote campaign, make sure that you're linking to your state's voter registration information and rules. 2, partner with coalition members or existing campaigns or hashtags that are going on right now. You want to check in on what's popular and see if there's an active drive. 3, like we've said, you keep your messaging personal and direct, and if possible, include an anecdote. And 4, repeat. When it comes to advocacy in social media, repetition is very helpful. I do want to note that that doesn't mean copying and pasting the same tweet over and over and over again. Like, you want to create new content, but repeating some of the information and the purpose of whatever issue that you are campaigning for is very useful. Next slide. Okay, bonus rule. Do not feed the trolls. You can't necessarily not read comments when you're running an online forum or a webinar like this, but you can learn to limit what you're spending your time on. I do want to pause here for a second for something that's important on this front. Online trolls, or to explain that a little bit, they're really mean people online that are tweeting at you specifically, like the bullies. They've become a cultural phenomenon / curse, facet of life these days that we all have to deal with, but I cannot stress enough that some of them are genuine danger. Practicing safety online as an advocate is critical, especially if you're amplifying sensitive topics like sexual assault and harassment, reproductive rights, covering the oppression of marginalized communities, you know, everything that AAUW works in. So with that said, I want you to be careful with personal information, privacy and password protections, and your name. As a public advocate myself, if I'm not careful, using my name and city, someone could find where I work, where I live, and where I hang out. I do regularly check websites like whitepages.com to request that my addresses be taken down, and typically do this before big issue campaigns or public speaking events, just in case. Now, this is not a concern for most advocates and the work that we're all doing, but it bears repeating. Ignore the trolls, block and report them, and be safe about your information. That said, so the idea of trying something new as an advocate can be daunting, I know. Utilizing social media to connect and mobilize with folks is impactful, and in this time of COVID-19, it's also necessary. Right now, we have a true opportunity to build direct conversations in our communities on specific voter issues. And tonight we'll go over the top 3 actions that I'm asking you to learn to support Get Out the Vote and voter education advocacy for 2020. So let's look at some of the ways we can get you active. Action number 1, voter registration drive. This first action is as simple as picking one of the platforms and writing a message. Here's a tweet from me last month that I also cross-posted on Instagram and Facebook. Some of you may have seen this tweet already on some more recent webinars, but it does summarize some of our basic tips. Notice that I use a trending hashtag. And hold on, for those of you who are on your phone or might not be able to read this, this is a photo of me with a tweet. Have you registered to vote yet, folks? I remember registering on my 18th birthday at a music festival and have voted ever since. I challenge you to check your registration status along with 3 friends today. Hashtag GOTV, hashtag Throwback Thursday, DC voter status at Vote for DC, and a link to my DC, the local Board of Elections. So I used a trending hashtag. Like Throwback Thursday is always popular on Thursdays, as well as connecting and linking to my local Board of Elections. I used an adorable photo of me when I was a baby and had first registered to vote. It was precious, nerdy, hopefully memorable. I shared this on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and since it's shareable and the text is easy to copy, other folks could have then shared it. So I urge you to take note of some of these tips and go take advantage of it. Maybe some of you have already requested an absentee ballot online or even voted by mail already and can share your experience or even a photo. And if you haven't done that yet, take a photo and share your experience afterwards. Next Action number 2 is to host a candidate forum. Teletown halls with candidates and your social network are a very valuable voter education opportunity. This action is a chance to practice your organizing skills. The steps are much the same as in person, but instead of requesting space at a community center, you're choosing a platform online and going virtual. You can use the AAUW voter issue guide as a tool to structure your conversation and assess your state's needs and the candidate's stances. Many of these forums are being hosted by a specific organization or issue-based coalition, but some of them are being run by constituents. So just be sure to invite all candidates for the race or races that you are looking to discuss and be prepared on the topics. I want you to remember, invite targeted participants and ask them to invite their friends, partner with coalitions, research your candidates, and ask prepared questions. Finally, choose an accessible platform. The majority of the ones that I'm seeing are on Facebook or Zoom. That said, here's an example from my community. A local paper in my area hosted a candidate forum for city council. I want you to take note of a few things here. They hosted it on Zoom and Facebook. They invited all candidates for the race from multiple parties. And they have both links on their page to follow, and within the image itself has a single link typed for full information, and that makes this image shareable on all platforms. All right, so action number 3, champion a voter issue. I know this sounds vague, but bear with me. Organizations plan what we call a Twitter storm on an issue, usually in coalitions, to amplify the conversation online. I'm asking you to pick a topic that is important to you and host or engage with a Twitter storm around it. You should research the issue and which day would be impactful if you're planning it yourself. Partner with coalition members to develop and disseminate the information. Invite influencers to participate. Alert targeted participants and ask them to invite their friends. And finally, design several images to include throughout the Twitter storm. Remember to retweet posts from others as well, and that all content sharing is valued. And here is an example from AAUW. We participated recently with a coalition for Mother's Day. I want you to take note of a few things here. First of all, the week itself was important. Obviously, it was for Mother's Day. But the hashtag Frontline Moms was a coalition group creation. It was concise and meaningful. We have multiple tweets throughout that time, from simple messages with these images that we created to data-based informational ones. And also, we used other trending and topical hashtags like hashtag COVID-19 or Mother's Day or essential workers. It brought a lot of different conversations happening online into what our topic was about. And finally, we also retweeted other coalition members' posts and a few high-profile folks like the one shown here from Representative Jackie Spear. Finally, when it comes to any of these actions or utilizing social media, resources are very important. I have a few here, both on AAUW.org and AAUWaction.org. We have a lot of information, especially on AAUWaction.org when it comes to get out the vote and voter education issues. And the 2-Minute Activist on AAUW.org will link to a lot of quick facts and information about key topics. So with that said, we are going to go through. I have seen a lot coming in on the Q&A. I want to thank everyone for contributing to that. Before we take those questions, I do want to close out saying this. Social media itself, I think, is a social experiment in practice. We want you to be prepared and be smart about advocacy online, but remember that everything you do to advance and amplify work on key social issues is incredible and impactful. So I want to thank you for all of your efforts on that. With that, Rhiannon, let's take a look at some of this Q&A.
Great. Great.
I see a good one. Trish asked, what do you mean by the word tagging?
Okay, so tagging, people use it kind of in 2 different meanings. You can either tag things with the topic with the hashtag, or if you're tagging another person's handle. So if I do the little at symbol and I do, say I'm using my personal account and I go at AAUW, like, what can you tell me about women in the student debt crisis? So then the AAUW account would get a notification and be like, hey, you've been mentioned, you've been tagged. And then I would see that post. And if I retweeted it with some resources, then all of my audience would also see your tweet.
I see a really good question from Renee. So what exactly is the hashtag? Does it send your tweet somewhere, link your tweet to something? That's a really good question. And so a hashtag is, like we've talked, it's a very short phrase that is trending and popular on whatever platform you're using. Say it's Twitter. It does, within that platform, collect everyone who uses that hashtag into one like conversation or thread that you can go through. It doesn't send you to like AUW information about that topic. It's all within that platform, but it is a helpful way to join a conversation online. Rhiannon, do you have anything else for that?
No, I think you summarized that really well. I see a question from Anne asking, what does Twitter Storm mean? So this is something that is very common in the coalition policy advocacy world on Twitter. And it's almost like the aim is to try and get your topic hashtag trending. So it's trying to, over a short period of time, get a lot of posts around that one hashtag so that more people see it. So it's usually a predetermined hour and everybody decides, okay, on X day from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern time, we're all going to just blast this and hopefully get noticed. Robin, did you have anything to add on that one?
That's great. I see a question from Pamela. On which platforms can one make corrections? What if you accidentally hit the post key? Very good question. Something that gives me personal anxiety sometimes. So Instagram and Facebook, you can go back and edit things. Twitter, you would have to delete the tweet. And I do want to say, even with that, things can be saved online, and the second you hit post, someone can go take a photo of it, like screenshot it on their device, and use it later. So I would be very, very careful when posting about anything to go through our checklist of spell check, make sure the links are correct, and all of that. But yes, I'm most paranoid about that with Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, again, that proofreading is really, really important. You can edit on pretty much everything other than Twitter, but like Robin said, once it's out there, it's out there. So proofread. I do see a question about how do you find trending hashtags on your advocacy topic. So we'll send this presentation out later, but if you go back and look at some of the tools that I suggested, you can also Google it. Honestly, I Google these things all the time. But just look for, how do I find the best hashtag? There are a lot of tools that are free. Hashtagify and RightTag are two that I am familiar with myself. And what you can do is basically just like plug in a couple hashtags and it'll give you metrics on them, and you can see which one has the most impressions, which will be the one that's being used the most.
I also see kind of a related question on how do we find what an active drive would be or hashtag. Again, like with those on like Twitter, they have like the top trending hashtags, but I also recommend, like, if you're just starting a social media account, going through and following every relevant organization that you like follow AAUW, and all of our coalition partners, and you'll start to see the hashtags and campaigns that we're working on that you can then amplify and elevate. So it's all kind of intermingled together on, like, you'll learn once you start your account and once you follow other accounts and connect with other people, and you'll pick it up as you go.
I see a question about, do you recommend branch Facebook pages not be linked to a personal account? So the way that Facebook pages work is you have to have a link to personal accounts for your admins to be able to run the page. But I wouldn't run an organizational Facebook page as your personal page. So it should always be, AUW of X. And then, you have to have it linked to people in order to moderate it. It's just the way Facebook does it to make sure it's not like Russian trolls. But yeah, you definitely do want to be, like Robin said, be security conscious when you're doing that, because admins are public viewing. But if you have your account set up so that your profile is private, they'll see your name, but they won't see any other information about you. And when you post as the page, it'll say AWFX said whatever. It won't, even if you're posting it as the admin. So there's that.
I see someone asking what makes it shareable on all platforms. So I have two answers for that. First, some of the examples I included, it was an image and text. So most social media platforms, like Rhiannon said, if there's an image, that gets more attention. It just catches folks' eye, because a lot of people are visual learners. But also being able to share an image and then just copy and paste text to another platform is really useful. That said, the handle or someone's like account name on platforms can vary platform to platform, because some have already been taken. So say your local board of elections has their platform on Twitter, like their handle on Twitter, spelled out a specific way. It might be slightly different on Instagram or on like Facebook. You connect in like various different ways. That said, when you have personal social media accounts, most of them have now integrated that you can share from Instagram over to Facebook. And in that, you are sending the exact same data over to something, and it might not translate like a link or a handle properly. But you want to make sure that all of that information is correct before hitting share. And Rhiannon, is there anything out there that you'd want to clarify that might not have been as clear?
Well, I think you
Okay.
did that well. I have a question. In your experience, which platforms or tactics have the best ROI or rate on investment, or return on investment, as we said earlier, and or highest chance of conversion? So definitely want to reiterate that Instagram is good for brand visibility, but is very, very difficult to get those conversions. That's not to say it doesn't have a high ROI. It's just more supportive to your other handles and platforms, if that makes sense. I would say it's going to depend on your audience. If it's a heavier lift, as we say, so if it's like a more involved ask of your audience, I would say Facebook is probably where you're going to generally find your most invested followers. And you can kind of ask them to do a little bit more there than maybe you would on your other platforms. But Twitter is a close second for sure. But again, it's such a fast-paced environment on Twitter that you kind of have to make your asks very fast and simple. Do you have anything to add to that, Robin?
No, that's good. Can you talk about the differences between stories or posts in Facebook and Instagram, benefits, drawbacks, etc.? Do you want to go?
Sure. So stories, both on Instagram and Facebook, I would personally argue that Instagram stories are more used than Facebook stories.
Yeah.
It was kind of one of those features that was introduced by Facebook that I don't know necessarily caught on as well as it did on Instagram. But your story is going to be, it's temporary. So it's only available for 24 hours, usually from when you posted it, which is why I think it's really good on Instagram for like covering live events or things that like you don't necessarily want to clog up your posting feed because it might not be applicable to everybody in your audience. But it can kind of be a fun, almost like more casual way of posting because it does disappear and people have to kind of like go and look for it to watch it. But yeah, I would say, you know, your posts are going to be more things that you need people to have access to for a long period of time. And your stories are more kind of just fun stuff, I would say. Do you have any extra input on that?
No, that's about it. Do you have to get permission to retweet someone else's tweet? Look, that's a really great question. A lot of folks coming into social media from a very professional standpoint and you know, etiquette that we're all trying to practice online and virtually, that makes perfect sense. However, nope, not at all. You do not have to ask. You retweet. That's the whole purpose of Twitter. Folks love getting retweets. I am tickled whenever someone retweets my stuff. So it's not like you are taking their content. You're actually helping them by amplifying whatever their message is.
Yes, please retweet AAUW.
Yeah,
We love it.
Retweet me, retweet everybody that you want to. I also will say though that retweets, it's really common to see on folks' bios that, you know, retweet is not an endorsement. I understand that, and a lot of like journalists will say that. However, if you're retweeting something and it's now on your Twitter page or your Facebook, people are going to understand that like you like what that person's saying. So just retweet wisely. I'm not in the habit of retweeting something that I find appalling or I disagree with, and that's not necessarily the purpose of it.
I see a question here that maybe Robin might have some insights into. I haven't done it with candidates, but I have some thoughts maybe. When inviting candidates to participate in your teletown hall, are there things you should consider to increase your chances that the candidate will accept your invite? Is there something they are assuming you will provide as a participant in the virtual setting?
Good question. I don't think that, other than you being the one who organizes all of the digital aspect of it. So for this, we set up an RSVP for our Zoom, and you RSVP'd and then you got a link. That would be done by you. I think a great idea for teletown halls is to fall back on coalition work or reaching out to, say, local news for like a local paper. Something that adds credibility to your ask will definitely help, and also can help with the work that goes into organizing it and expand the audience that you can reach with it. But other than that, just stating what your intent is for, you know, what kind of questions and topics you're going to go over, and inviting everybody. Yeah.
For sure. I mean, like to reiterate what Robin said, if you're just like regular person, right, and you're sending an email to this candidate, having a coalition or a partnership with something that's going to kind of carry a bit more weight is definitely going to be beneficial. And again, yeah, organizing all of the technology for them, very similar to the CTAs on social media or the calls to action, the things you want people to do, make it as easy for them as possible, right? And then one thing that is kind of something you can ask them to do for you if they've accepted and seem very friendly, is to pre-write some tweets or posts for them and include promotional graphics if that's something you're able to create, and send them to them and be like, hey, would you mind promoting this on your channels? So I mean, because if they've already agreed to be involved in it, it's likely that they will help you promote it. Again, I suggest you pre-write the stuff so that, again, they just copy and paste it and it takes them 2 seconds. So it's not a huge ask on their end, but that's a super great partnership to definitely take advantage of.
And to point back to the example that I had given, that image on the left side, like the poster style, is something that I would create myself. I would use Canva. Canva is your best friend for free design. And I would send that to everyone once they have confirmed their participation and say, here's something that you can share that they don't even have to copy and paste text. They would just have to share that image because it had everything on it. It had a link to how to RSVP, who was hosting it, where to find it, when, all of that. So that's where I find having an image very useful.
Sure.
Related, I see someone asking, how do we host a teletown hall on both Zoom and Facebook? I was curious if anyone would catch that. Rhiannon and I saw that in my example, and I have no idea. We're going to go Google that. This is a great example of how we learn on the job, especially with quarantine, and how everyone's always innovating with social media. Yeah, constantly changing.
Absolutely. I had to Google how to share those slides without also sharing my presenter notes 3 hours ago. So we are constantly looking these things up now that we're in a primarily virtual world. We've got to adapt to new things. I have a question from Karen. It seems like there's a big difference in demographics for Facebook versus Gram. Agree, trying to target 30 to 50-year-olds. Yes, so like we said, not only do different people come to the different platforms for different things, they do also attract different demographic audiences. And you can totally, again, I could Google this, there are so many breakdowns of different social media experts about who's on each platform. But yeah, as a general rule of thumb, Facebook, I think millennials are probably the last generation to even sort of have a Facebook that they maybe don't post on anymore, but they check it. So anybody younger than 25 probably is not on Facebook. Facebook is generally, the most active people on Facebook tend to be over 50. Twitter is more cross-sectional, I would say, but you are going to get a lot of people mid-career and younger. Instagram is definitely going to be younger. It is starting to skew a little bit older now that things like Snapchat and TikTok and things are coming along that the Gen Zers are using. But yeah, it looks like Karen is looking to target 30 to 50-year-olds. So I would say they're kind of all fair game for that age range. If you were looking for 20-year-olds versus 60-year-olds, I would say we've got different things. But
I also say what's the purpose? What are you looking to use it for? Are you looking to build community, or are you looking to host an advocacy outreach event or disseminate information? All of that is definitely something to target each platform for. I also will say, while Facebook is not as popular for building community and interacting across demographics, it is a useful tool. One of the few reasons why I go to Facebook anymore are for teletown halls and to listen in for a speaker or something, because it is free, because it is accessible. So it is useful on that front. But it really depends on what your purpose is. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I do see a good question here on safety, on the safety front. What is a bot as opposed to a troll? Good question. Impact-wise and emotionally, sometimes no difference. The messages from bots that target you for advocacy-related content can be very mean as well. But that's a robot. That is an actual program that someone wrote to locate different phrases and comment on different conversations, and it's not a real human. A troll specifically is a human. That is an online bully that will go look at trending hashtags or specific topics. It's usually issue-based, and attack people verbally online.
I have seen a couple of different questions about, like, you didn't mention LinkedIn. Do not mention LinkedIn. It would definitely be number 4. It would be the next one. It's a very kind of, there are some people who use LinkedIn all the time, but I would say most people only go to LinkedIn when they're looking for a new job. So it's not a great, like, unless what you're promoting is like job finding resources. So like we do promote our salary negotiation course, Work Smart Online, on LinkedIn, because that's going to be relevant to most people who are currently looking at LinkedIn. But it's generally not super conducive to advocacy. It's more kind of professional and business based.
Yeah.
And then a couple questions about YouTube as well. YouTube is more of a tool than a community, if that makes sense. It's sort of less social than the other social platforms. So even if you were using YouTube to do a live stream, you would still be promoting that live stream on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. It'd be the same as promoting a Zoom call or something on one of your social platforms.
Well, I see another Canva question. I'm telling you, it's my favorite tool. So someone just signed into Canva just now to see what images and designs they could get. It looks hard to find an appropriate image. How do you use it? That's a fantastic question. I really like Canva for the built-out templates. So there are templates in there for Instagram, for Facebook banners versus posts versus Twitter. I mean, they have everything sized for you so that you don't create something in like Microsoft Paint and then realize that it's too wide for Instagram, so it's useless because it cuts off the date and time. So all of those templates are amazing. You're right on some of the images not being free or easy to find, which is where I would recommend going back to Pixabay and, what's the other one that we use?
Unsplash.
Unsplash, yeah. So the two that we suggested earlier for the free images, which we used for this webinar, I've used for my own advocacy work. I love those websites as well. So if you combine those 3 tools together, you can create some really, really innovative and beautiful social media posts.
Yes. Canva, it depends, if you're doing this for a state or a branch. Canva, which we have, does have a pro account. I think it's like $19 a month. So if that's something that you have the budget for, you get access to all of those things that have like the little watermarks on them. You can also buy things like one-off for a couple dollars, but I find that for cost for value, I would say it's a decent investment if that's something that you have the budget for and are interested in really digging into. But it's sometimes you're not going to find the perfect image, your ideal perfect image that you want using the free sites. You can do something workable with a combination of the 3.
I see a good question for those who are just starting accounts. Is there a directory for Instagram accounts so you can find organizations that you want to follow? Fantastic question. If you follow, say, AAUW, after you hit follow, a little bar will appear on Instagram that will suggest related accounts. So it will automatically, like this is where the algorithm actually helps us. The algorithm will automatically pull anything that we've ever tagged and connected with or commented on or reposted or shared or retweeted. Like it will direct you over to them. So sometimes I go down a rabbit hole of realizing I want different content on my social media. And I'll go and like an influencer or famous person that I follow or politician or organization, and then just see all of the other ones that it's suggesting to me and just like go follow. And suddenly there you go. I've got a lot more content that I want to see in my personal feed. Y'all are asking really great questions. I really appreciate it. There are so many questions. So if there are any other questions that we don't get to tonight, because we're coming up on 6 o'clock Eastern, and I know folks have dinner, please feel free to reach out to us. I am really excited to engage with you and to engage with you on social media. There are a few.
I see a question. What is the fastest, most efficient approach to building a significant following? There's no magic bullet, really. It's very much people are like, how do I go viral? It's like, nobody knows. But a couple good steps are definitely following those best practices that we highlighted earlier and really connecting with those already established accounts. It's, trying to find partnerships, making sure that, if you develop a partnership, you're tagging them and stuff, but they're also tagging you and stuff. So it's reciprocity there. Really, if you can tap into anybody else's network and get them to give you a shout out and be like, hey, they provide cool stuff, follow them. That's really going to be the best organic way to get that. Obviously, there are paid advertising routes, but sometimes that's just prohibitively expensive these days. It's really just making connections with other accounts is going to be your best bet on more quickly expanding your audience. And also providing value. Don't forget to provide value.
Yep. I have another question. We have some members who think candidate forums are partisan, not understanding that they are political, and AAUW is political, especially since you invite both parties. How do you work around that? That's a very good question because I get it a lot. Whenever we send out something that someone believes is partisan, and we are a nonpartisan organization, you said it, AAUW is nonpartisan, but it is political. And if someone understands a political stance to be specific to one party, that is their understanding in their world. And you can only go so far until you say, well, that I can't change your mind on that. Like, this is an event with all parties invited. And if some parties or candidates decide not to attend, or they have schedule conflicts that can't be fixed, that is what it is. Yeah, we advocate our core issues, which you can find on our voter issue guide, and invite everyone to the table to discuss it with us.
I see a question. How can an organization best encourage its volunteers to amplify the organization's posts, tweets, etc.? So this is great. By encouraging them all the time to do it. I would say if you have a listserv or something, or especially right now, so we can't have in-person events, so it's very difficult. But if you have a listserv, definitely, just whenever somebody first joins, have a welcome email series, whatever, that has your handles, asks you to follow. We love, come help us, right? Definitely when we get back to having in-person events, post your handle everywhere, like physically on signage, tell people to follow you and to use whatever the hashtag is, and just say it all the time. And people will do it. When it's possible, if you can gamify anything or make something like a contest for the prize, that's always super great incentive on social media. Like, it's a thing we do at Nick Whistle, our student conference that we have in the spring, not this year, obviously. But, where it's like, go take a picture with X and post it with this, and you could win this t-shirt. It's things like that that can definitely get people engaged at a live event.
Giveaways are great.
Giveaways are awesome. And that's also a really great way to facilitate a partnership with another organization or group or business, to be like, hey, if you donate whatever product it is, then we'll promote you during our conference, and you get free promotion through our giveaway. So it's just sort of developing relationships like that are super important.
And I will say someone asked a question that is relevant to something you just said about when you start an account, share your handle everywhere and anywhere. And they asked, are we going to share our Twitter handle? And I feel incredibly accurately, appropriately called out on we did not make a slide with our own social media. So yes, we will share that afterwards. Thank you for asking. I see some specific questions like Facebook posts. Some have a share link and some do not. Some on my feed, some on others. Seems totally random. Actually, it's not, especially with Facebook. That is dependent on whoever's post that is, their privacy settings. So you can, if you want something to be shareable, you can ask them, hey, can you go change the privacy setting on this? And they can then choose to or not. And that is the one case where asking permission is sometimes necessary. Yep.
I have a question. How can we assess social media engagement? So that's a great question. Obviously, you can anecdotally guess whether or not your stuff is performing well, but metrics is what you need. So there are a couple, again, you can literally just Google free social media metrics tools, and there are dozens of them. But there are also native metrics within pretty much all of these platforms, totally available for free. It's your account. You can check how many people have seen it. So particularly Facebook has really good metrics on the admin side of posts. If you have a page, you can check your impressions, your reach, and your engagement rate. So your engagement rate is determined by basically the number of engagements you got. So those are likes, comments, shares, those things, divided by the number of people who saw your post. So generally the rate can be kind of misleading. A lot of social media metrics are kind of misleading, but people love them. But so basically you have to take it with a grain of salt and you have to kind of look into it, because you could have a 50% engagement rate, but that could mean 4 people saw your post and 2 people liked it, right? And obviously that's not super successful because not that many people saw it. Usually a high engagement rate is 3%. So 1%, honestly, if you're reaching, 20,000 impressions, then that's a decent engagement rate. So there are lots of tools out there that you can use, and Twitter has its own analytics, Instagram has its own analytics. There are tools out there that can compile them all together for you so you can get a cross-sectional view. Really just play around for it and Google it and search what's out there.
Yep. So I'm going to take one more question that leads into moving forward. And again, reach out to us if you have any more questions or want to engage on social media or get clarification. This was a very popular webinar, so we likely will have a 201 version where we kind of dig a little bit deeper. So please stay tuned for that. But this question is, does National prepare any artwork or images for Facebook about elections or women's issues like the Mother's Day graphic? Things that we have created are public now, but that is on the coming up to-do list. A toolkit on GOTV and voter education on the issues will be coming, working on it. And as we've gone over tonight, everything shifts so quickly that you can only plan ahead on items like that so far ahead of time. But that is definitely coming, so please stay tuned. And so with all of that said, I do want to thank everyone again for tuning in. I hope that the information you received here was both helpful and empowering, especially now as engaging via social media is critical while we adjust to the impacts of COVID-19. We appreciate your engagement and hard work. So with that, stay tuned for all of our toolkits and webinars coming up. And please give us feedback to let us know what you think. Have a great night and stay safe.
Well, good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us.